What happens when the largest economy in the world collapses? Is a trouble to one, a trouble for all? How deeply will it affect the world as a whole? Have you ever wondered what will happen if the US economy collapses? End of the world? Well, with recent events, we can say it's happening already. Welcome. In today's video, we are going to be exploring possible outcomes and effects of the SVB collapse and US economy as a whole. So, why don't you take a note and try to jot some things down? Let's go. The US economy is the largest in the world, with a GDP of around $22 trillion. As such, it plays a significant role in the global economy. The US is a major consumer of goods and services, a significant exporter of goods and services, and a major source of investment capital. The US dollar is also the world's dominant reserve currency, which means that many countries hold US dollars as a means of storing value and conducting international trade. The extent to which the world economy is dependent on the US economy varies by country and by sector. Some countries have closer economic ties to the US than others. For example, some countries are heavily dependent on exporting goods to the US, while others are more focused on providing services to US consumers or businesses. That being said, the global economy is highly interconnected, and any significant disruption in the US economy could have ripple effects across the world. For example, a recession or financial crisis in the US could lead to reduced demand for imports, lower global growth rates, and increased financial market volatility. Talking about crisis, is this the first time such is happening in the US? Obviously no. The first major economic crisis to hit the US was the Panic of 1819. It was caused by an overexpansion of credit and land speculation after the War of 1812. This resulted in a severe economic contraction with widespread unemployment, business failures, and foreclosures. Let's take a look at the Great Depression. This was one of the most devastating economic crises in American history, lasting from 1929 to 1939. During this time, unemployment skyrocketed, poverty and homelessness became rampant, and industrial production dropped drastically. The stock market crash of 1929 is widely seen as the spark that ignited this disaster. The 2008 financial crisis is another prominent example of an economic collapse in the United States. This crisis was caused by a large amount of subprime mortgages being issued during a period of excessive housing speculation. Banks and other institutions ended up with huge amounts of debt they couldn't pay back, leading to a cascade of bankruptcies throughout the financial sector. Finally, let's talk about the 2020 coronavirus pandemic, an event that is still unfolding today. Due to widespread business closures and restrictions on movement, many businesses are struggling to stay afloat and millions are facing unemployment due to job losses. It remains to be seen what long-term effects this will have on our economy. Talking about effects, what happens when the US economy goes through a crisis? An economic collapse in the USA could have significant ripple effects across the world due to the country's status as the world's largest economy and its interconnectedness with other economies. Here are some possible effects. 1. Reduced demand for imports. If US consumers cut back on spending during a recession, this would reduce demand for imports from other countries. This could have a negative impact on countries that rely heavily on exporting to the US. 2. Lower global growth. The US is the world's largest economy, and a recession there could lead to lower global growth rates. This would affect not only countries that export to the US, but also those that have trade relationships with other countries that are impacted by the US recession. 3. Financial market volatility. The US stock market is closely watched by investors around the world, and a recession there could lead to increased volatility in global financial markets. This could affect the value of investments held by individuals and institutions around the world. 4. Reduced investment. During a recession, companies may cut back on investment spending, both domestically and abroad. This could lead to reduced economic growth and job creation in other countries that rely on investment from the US. Currency devaluation. This is a likely outcome if the US goes through an economic crisis. Can it have any effect on the rest of the world? Yes, a currency devaluation in the US would likely have significant effects on the global economy. Here are some potential impacts. 1. Reduced demand for US goods and services. A devaluation of the US dollar would make US exports less expensive, but it would also make imports more expensive. This could lead to a reduction in demand for US goods and services from other countries, which could have negative effects on US businesses that rely on exports. 2. Increased demand for other currencies. A devaluation of the US dollar could lead to increased demand for other currencies, such as the euro or the yen. This could strengthen those currencies and potentially make imports from countries that use those currencies more expensive. 3. Financial market volatility. A currency devaluation in the US could lead to increased volatility in global financial markets. Investors may become more risk-averse and seek out safe haven assets, such as gold or government bonds. 4. International trade imbalances. A devaluation of the US dollar could also lead to trade imbalances with other countries. If the value of the US dollar decreases, it could make US imports more expensive, which could lead to a trade deficit with other countries. Overall, a currency devaluation in the US could have significant effects on the global economy, particularly on international trade and financial markets. The severity of the impact would depend on the extent and speed of the devaluation, as well as other factors such as government policy responses. Can an economic collapse in the US economy affect the world? The answer is a resounding yes. The US has long been a leader in global economics, and any significant economic downturn would have far-reaching implications. Just look at how the 2008 financial crisis had a ripple effect around the globe. The US economy was greatly affected, but so were many other countries' economies. In more recent years, the US has become increasingly interconnected with other countries' economies. This means that if one economy experiences turmoil, it can quickly spread to others. For example, if the US were to suffer from a major recession or depression, it could lead to a global economic crisis. Other countries would be impacted through decreased demand for their exports, increasing debt levels, and volatile markets. This is an important question to answer because if the US economy were to collapse, it would have serious repercussions for many countries around the world. Let's take a look at some of the potential effects. First and foremost, if the US economy were to collapse, it could lead to a global recession. The US is one of the largest economies in the world, and its success or failure affects countries all over the globe. When the US economy weakens, other countries suffer as well due to decreased demand for their goods and services. This can lead to job losses, poverty, and reduced economic activity. Second, an economic collapse in the US could lead to increased volatility in global financial markets. When investors become uncertain about where to invest their money due to a lack of confidence in the US economy, they may become more likely to move their money out of stocks and bonds and into cash or gold. This can cause stock prices to drop significantly and make investing less attractive for foreign investors. Finally, an economic collapse in the US could lead to political instability in other countries. If people feel that their own governments are unable or unwilling to protect them from a financial crisis caused by another country's economic woes, they may become more willing to take part in demonstrations or protests against those governments. This could potentially lead to civil unrest or even revolution in some parts of the world. As you can see, an economic collapse in the US could have far-reaching consequences for many countries around the world. It is therefore important that we understand what could happen if such an event were ever to occur so that we can be prepared for any eventuality. What can the international community do to help the US? The United States, like any other country, is impacted by global economic conditions. While other countries can provide support and assistance to the US during times of economic crisis, there are limits to what they can do, as the US economy is so large and complex. That being said, there are a few ways in which other countries can help the US during an economic crisis. 1. Trade. Other countries can continue to trade with the US and purchase American goods, which can help support the US economy. By maintaining open trade relationships with the US, other countries can help the US recover from economic downturns. 2. Investment. Foreign investment in the US can also provide a boost to the economy, as it can create jobs and stimulate economic growth. Other countries can invest in American companies or infrastructure, which can help support the US economy during a crisis. 3. Monetary policy. Central banks in other countries can adjust their monetary policies to help stabilize the global economy, which can have a positive impact on the US economy. This can include lowering interest rates or providing liquidity to financial markets. 4. International cooperation. International organizations like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank can provide support and assistance to the US during an economic crisis. These organizations can provide funding, technical expertise, and policy guidance to help the US navigate economic challenges. In summary, the world can help the US during an economic crisis through trade, investment, monetary policy, and international cooperation. However, ultimately the US will need to take action to address the root causes of the crisis and implement effective policies to promote economic growth and stability. We have come to the end of today's video. What do you think will happen if the largest economy in the world crashes? Are we safe to say an economic problem in the US is an international problem? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Do well to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon in order to get notified whenever we post our next mind-blowing video. See you in the next video.